Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I am very, very honored to be interviewing a very special space champion, Mr. Strobel. Mr. Strobel is the CEO and president at Space Micro Incorporation and has also founded multiple fast growth high technology companies in the space and defense markets. Mr. Strobel went to the United States Air Force Academy for his bachelor's degree for aeronautical engineering. Then, for his master's degree, he went to Cornell University for nuclear engineering, and for his MBA, went to Claremont Graduate University. Mr. Strobel's passion for space, business, and space development is truly fascinating, and I can't wait to learn more about his space journey. Welcome, Mr. Strobel. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to conduct this interview.
Well, thank you very much. It sounds like a professional student.
Thank you. Yeah, so I would love to learn more about, your space journey and really how you got into it. But before, I'd like to know more about your typical day. What do you currently do and how does it run?
I must really like to juggle because I make a to-do list every day. My wife gives me a problem with it and she gives me a bad time. It's probably got 30 or 40 things on the to-do list and I just try to prioritize them. There's writing proposals, hiring people, doing some training, running program reviews, uh, trying to set up strategic alliances. Recently, a lot of webinars, uh, but it's very, very, very mixed. It's a combination of internal looking and outward facing.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone, regardless of whatever age they are, always has a to-do list. So I think that's something we all need every time. But yeah, I'm glad to hear you're able to do so many things, even during a pandemic, and it hasn't really affected too much of your daily schedule.
I just miss seeing people in person
Oh, yes. Yeah.
badly. You know, anybody who's an extrovert has really suffered during COVID.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. And I'm sure throughout your, space career and your college education and even beyond, you probably have been a part of so many exciting projects and research. So what is the most exciting project or research that you've worked on?
Well, there's a lot of them, but I think the one that really stands out is our optical communications in space, or also known as lasercom, where we developed and tested, qualified, and delivered a very high data rate optical communication for communicating between low Earth orbit and the ground.
Wow.
And it was probably the highest, I think it's the highest data rate ever done from space.
That's really cool. Could you explain more about this project? Like, how were you guys able to do this?
I can't explain much about it because of the nature of the customer.
Oh, yeah, I
Just have to
understand.
leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah, I totally understand. And so as the co-founder of Space Micro, you helped build a company from a regular R&D startup to a 125 employee business with 13 million in annual sales. So how were you able to do this? And what was your inspiration for really finding this company?
Well, it's essentially my third company. So some people would say you're a serial entrepreneur. So I typically grow them, eventually sell them. We try to set up employee-owned companies so that the people who contribute the most to the development and growth of the company end up being financially rewarded in the end as well. So we sold our second company and I quote unquote retired and found I couldn't retire and my wife wanted me out of the house. So that was a, that was how we started the third company, which is Space Micro.
Wow. Yes.
I'm
So
not sure that's inspiration. That's just, that's not being able to retire.
yeah. So out of these like three companies, if I may ask, like, are these like the same types of companies or were they different each time?
They're all in space business. One was a operating division of a larger company, and I guess the inspiration there was that that large company decided not to be in that business, so they let us spin off into a small business of our own. And one was called Space Electronics. We were doing microelectronics for space. This one's called Space Micro, and we're doing subsystems like cameras, star trackers, space processing, optical communication, radios. And you can essentially build an entire satellite out of those subsystems.
Wow. Wow, that's really cool. I had no clue. I had no idea you could do that. So, additionally, you also hold two US patents for space radiation shielding. So, could you tell us more about that?
I was actually having a dream one night, like this would be cool to do this. And I woke up and wrote it a little bit down so I didn't forget, and went in and filed a patent the next day. It was basically essentially um, a lot of commercial microelectronics would fail in space due to several mechanisms. And one is total ionizing ghosts, like the electrons and protons trapped in the Van Allen belts. So if you can shield those, particularly the electrons, you can shield them with high density materials. So the patent was basically how you can embed the materials into a microelectronic package and model it. And so you could get a commercial off the shelf, inexpensive part to work well in space.
Oh. Yeah, so have you been interested in various aspects of space? Or because I feel like space radiation is really unique. So were you always interested in space radiation, or, how did you get to it?
Well, I think my interest in space really started when I was a little boy, and they opened a thing called the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. And for some reason, I can't remember exactly why, but I got really enamored of going to school there and becoming part of the Air Force. And as it worked out, I was fortunate, studied hard, and got a congressional appointment and went to the U.S. Air Force Academy. And as you know, in those days, the Air Force was both airplanes and space. And so I was able to get into the space part of that business in the Air Force, and then eventually uh, migrated to business.
Yeah, did you know that this is what you wanted to do? Because you said you wanted to go to the academy, or did you have like twists and turns in your journey that really made you who you are today? Because you said you diverted into businesses. So I'm sure you've had some twists and turns.
Well, one of the twists and turns when I graduated from the Air Force Academy, well, first of all, they kind of want you to be a pilot, but I didn't like the G forces in planes. So then I turned to research and development, and they sent me to Cornell for graduate school, and that was nuclear engineering. So I didn't know what my job would be in the Air Force, but they were smart enough, believe it or not, to say, what do we do with an astronautical engineering degree plus a nuclear engineering degree? And they said, why don't you go out to where we're developing a spacecraft and work on as a good use of your 2 degrees. So that was fortuitous that I wasn't put into a dead end job. I think the other twist and turn was I mentioned previously that the larger company I was working at decided not to go in that direction. And so they basically were going to lay us all off. And we went into the CFO and the CEO and said, hey, you don't need to lay us off. We'll buy our business out. And so that was a big step, and it was a risk we took, and got paid very little the first year or so, but it paid off. So that was quite a twist and turn.
Yeah, I think even having that real passion for space and, trusting your ability and work is really key in, any space journey. And so, how did you know? I mean, you said you didn't remember the exact reason why you wanted to go to the academy, but, how early were your passions for space identified, and did they ever change over time?
I don't think I really had an early passion for space. It was really pretty new. I certainly remember watching Neil Armstrong on the surface of the moon back in '69, I think it was. Um, no, it certainly hasn't faded. We celebrate here every time some of our electronic subsystems are being launched. And if it's an evening launch, we'll typically have a launch party. If it's a launch during the day, we'll put it on the like NASA TV and put it on the screen. And you certainly don't want all your hard work to go up in flames. So we've
Yeah,
been
that would
very
be,
fortunate and never had a launch failure for any of our
that's great.
electronics in space.
Yeah,
So
that's
for the evening launches, we'll have a party and people are maybe having some beers or wine, and so I'm having a combination of having a couple of drinks and then praying for a good launch. And
yeah.
that every launch we've had, and we've been on many different boosters, have been successful.
That's really good. That's really good. I'm really glad to hear that. I know like launch failures or, certain things happening because even like a small little part doesn't function as it's supposed to, it could, destroy the whole technology you've worked really hard on.
One of the astronauts several years ago, they asked him how it felt to be going up on this big booster. And he said, well, I worry about it a little bit because it's made out of 25,000 parts, all bought from the lowest bidder.
Yeah.
I love that quote.
Yeah, yeah. I honestly like, I think whenever I ask people like what excites them and what makes them nervous about the space industry, for the nervous part, everybody always says we're going at such a rapid pace and we're, trying to make space production more common and we're, not always taking the right precautionary steps, or we might skip over some precautionary steps, and that could lead to certain failures, which, results in a lot of public chaos.
Yeah, there were some failures in the past where it was a problem converting from, they were using metric system versus the
Oh,
US system.
yeah,
So that caused a failure. But
yeah.
right now, my concern is, if anything, I mean, there's so many commercial space firms being founded with venture capital and SPACs and companies going public. And we just hope it's not a bubble, that these satellites don't start falling out of space, or also some of the commercial ventures have to make money eventually. And so they have to create a return on investment for their investors. And we hope it's not a bubble.
Yeah, yeah, that's a valid concern. I feel like a lot of, especially entrepreneurs or in the business industry, can really relate to. And so back to your space journey, because I'm really curious more of how you got into the space industry. Were there any obstacles to pursuing your passion? Like, if so, how did you overcome your obstacles?
Well, like I said, I really got into it through the U.S. Air Force, and one obstacle was they wanted to assign me to a job that had nothing to do with space or technology, and I had to fight that and resist it and ask for another job. They wanted to assign me to another job where there was a nuclear reactor. I thought, well, this would be cool. I've got a nuclear engineering degree. Then I found out that reactor was going to be shut down and deactivated. So I had to go back to them third time and said, how about a third assignment? And that was the one that worked. It was the one at Space and Missile Systems Center up in El Segundo, where we worked on satellite technology.
Yeah, so it really worked out. It's like a twist and turn. And I'm also really curious is like, throughout your education experiences, you probably had really nice mentors, teachers who really guided you into, finding your passion, or at least knowing a direction of what you wanted to do. Or maybe even after college, maybe a volunteer role or an internship really assisted you in helping, pursue a job, or do something you'd like. So was there ever some sort of mentor or internship role that really helped you achieve your dreams?
I thought about thinking about that. I really didn't have a mentor that pushed me in this direction. Never had an internship. I think I just go back to my parents, who were both teachers, and they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said, "Oh, a teacher, of course." And my dad was a coach, a teacher and a coach, and they said, "No, you're going to do something more than that." And I
Yeah.
still think teachers are wonderful inspiration, but my parents said, "No, you're going to become an engineer."
Yeah. I feel like a lot of parents, they don't want their kids to do the same job, but do something a little different just to like change things up. And I feel like that's definitely common. And so I'm sure your parents were a huge part of your story in terms of teaching you character skills, providing you a direction. They're probably really rooted in your childhood that helped you become who you are.
Yes, definitely. My mother would, if I came home with a B, my mother was really on my case. So
Yes, like most mothers, even to this day, that has not, even though space has progressed for the past few years, I feel like the parenting style still is the same. Every parent still is on their kid all the time. Yeah. So my next question for you is, how do you keep your skills current and anticipate changes in the industry? Because you are a business, you're in the business part of space, and so you have to constantly develop technology or stay current with what the industry requires. So how are you able to do so much and keep up with the rapid change?
Well, I can think of three things. Number one, read a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
space news. There's several publications that are used to be in print and now online. Um, Going to a lot of space conferences, and then just getting out and listening to the seminars of the space conference. There's a great one up in Utah called the Small Satellite Conference in Logan, Utah. A lot of students there, probably 20 to 30 universities, and often they have booths. For us, that's a great recruiting place as well. And then recently, webinars. you
Yeah.
could spend
Yeah.
you could spend all day on webinars, and most of them right now are complimentary.
Yeah.
But it is changing very fast. I mean, our products, we need to reinvent our products every 2 years because of Moore's law. Semiconductors getting more and more advanced and finer feature sizes. So it's a constant path forward.
Yeah. And that really, social media first, I just like to say has played a huge role in all of us being able to learn and acquire information easier. Like I know there was this new app called like Clubhouse where you could like listen to space webinar or like different webinars of your choice. But every like few minutes I always get like pings like, oh, there's this space webinar or there's this webinar. So
Exactly.
yeah, so it's really nice like that we have all this information near us. And what you were saying is about the future of the industry is always constantly changing, like you were saying. So I'm sure you have some exciting things or excitement that you're looking forward to in the future of the space industry. And you've also mentioned some of your concerns. So could you like tell us some of your excitements for the space industry? Like what do you anticipate in the future that excites you?
Well, the commercialization of space is
Oh,
very
yes.
exciting. This used to be a government domain, and particularly the U.S. government. So now it's being, number one, commercialized, and even the U.S. government is buying services from, say, commercial companies doing imaging or commercial companies doing space weather. So rather than the government designing, manufacturing, building these satellites, putting them up, which are very expensive, they're typically buying the data, which is all they really needed anyway. So the second aspect of that is the internationalization of space. I think there's on the order of 100 countries now that have space
Wow,
programs,
that's amazing.
and many small companies. Mexico is launching their own satellites. We're not launching them. Mexico has satellites mostly for telecommunication, and some of often these are not made by that company, but they'll do it in conjunction with a U.S. or a European country. So we're seeing obviously space in our everyday life. Everybody knows about GPS.
Yeah, yeah, I
And
100%
my
agree.
and my direct TV, I wouldn't be able to watch the NCAA basketball tournament if it wasn't for my direct TV.
Yeah, yeah, we rely on space technology so much. The future of space, whether in terms of the commercialization, like you were saying, excites everyone and the global relations. I know, like, I was talking to someone and they were saying how they're really excited and they're hoping the Mars mission, where we land humans on Mars, could be a global effort, a global collaboration where we work together because now, more people are starting to get involved and we can accomplish more when we work together and collaborate with others. So I definitely agree in those aspects. And the future of space technology also excites me. Oh yeah, sorry. Did you have something to say?
Well, we actually at Space Micro we have contracts obviously with the U.S. government, but with NASA, with commercial ventures and international. So for example, we partnered with an Israeli firm to send the first commercial uh,
Wow.
lander to the moon, the Beresheet program out of Space IL. And we're working with a Finnish firm for star satellites. Um, we unfortunately we can't have international students here unless they're dual citizens because of the nature of some of the government work we do.
Hmm. But I know space is definitely getting more like inclusive in terms of like job opportunities as well. I know there's so many, consulting firms that are opening up just for creating space jobs. I know one company that I was reading about, like their goal is like within the next 10 years to like create 1 billion or help 1 billion people get space jobs. So I know like definitely there's so many people out there. Yeah, yeah. There's so many people out there who are really working to to create more jobs in the space industry. And so it's really exciting to see how much bigger the space will get.
Well, and we're finding it really helps. As a growing company, part of my job is the recruiting and retention of top talent, and we're finding that more and more people want to be in the space industry, not necessarily the avionics industry or other segments. And we can thank Elon Musk for that a lot, and NASA,
Yeah.
because it will, we basically promote ourselves as you can work on the space company and you're going to send stuff to the moon and you can tell your kids about that. And yeah, when my granddaughter was here from Switzerland, she's like 3, and I had to show the difference between, here's where the moon is, here's where the Earth is, here's where an airplane goes, because she just came off a big airplane. And I said, no, this is how far the moon is. And Papa Dave's company is sending stuff to the moon. So now she says, every day she draws a picture of a rocket going to the moon, and she's a little confused. She says, Papa Dave and I are going to the moon tomorrow.
Yeah, that's so sweet. I know Shill's definitely going to get involved in the space industry. It's really nice to see how kids are getting so involved in the space industry. I feel like there's been so much more news on space recently. People are getting really excited about the future, not only in terms of like the engineering aspect or actually going to exploring different, maybe finding life out there or exploring different planets, but also just the fact that we can get into more topics in space, like space medicine. It's becoming a bigger industry with, commercial flight and like humans space tourism and like artificial gravity, and there's like so many cool things that are being developed and creative ideas that are coming to life from like sci-fi movies. So it's really cool to see how our imaginary thinking is actually coming to life.
I think there's a company, is it called Higher Orbits, that actually sells kits for students of all different ages to and hosts some webinars as well.
Yeah, I
I mean,
definitely have to check
check
that
it out.
out.
I think it's called Higher Orbits.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out right after this. I actually have not heard about that. I think it'll be very cool. And I'm also very curious to getting your opinion on this. So, the goal of my YouTube series is really to show children around the world that you don't have to look like someone or, have certain like genetic genes or like, be a genius in math or be a genius in physics in order to be a part of the space industry. Like, there's so many other jobs in terms of like policy or like journalism, marketing, and so many things, so many skills that are needed. And so, there's so many unique career options in the space industry. So, what is your take on that? And what would you tell all the kids out there who are passionate about space?
Yeah, you certainly don't have to be an engineer to be involved in the space industry. I think at our company, we probably have at least half the people, maybe more, have engineering degrees. But there's people doing assembly, soldering. They don't have engineering degrees. They have people in quality assurance and inspectors. We have a number of people, obviously, in marketing and business development and marketing communications. We have then you have all the accounting and finance people. So those are all people involved in the space industry. And then if you uh, look at more globally, look at all the venture capital companies and private equity firms, who basically people have typically financial backgrounds and maybe a little smattering of engineering, and they're very involved in space. There's several private equity firms are buying smaller space businesses and for very nice premiums, by the way. And eventually, we'll probably go public.
Yeah. I'm really glad to see someone like you who's been involved in the business industry can tell, the public that there are so many careers. People are looking to hire a variety of skilled people. As long as you're passionate about space, you can find a career in space, based off of your strength and your skill set, what you're interested in. And so, yeah, were you about to say something, Mr. Strobel?
Well,
Sorry.
I will add something to that, though, is some of our accounting people, and our accounting people have to find out what everybody gets paid in our company because they do the payroll and all. And I've had more than once they would come up and say, I wish I'd taken an engineering degree in college, because the pay scales for engineers are just typically a lot nicer than for accounting, as an
Yeah.
example.
Mhm. Yeah, there's definitely that. I feel like there's that motivation, but also, I was talking with so many students who are pursuing engineering right now in college, and they were saying how they get like demotivated because they're not good at calculus. And then, when I talk with professionals, they're like, "Oh, I failed my calculus class, but now I'm an engineer at Lockheed Martin, and I don't even use those skills." And so, what's your opinion on that?
A couple of opinions is, number one, you don't have to be an A+ student to do well in industry. Uh, when we interview or when we look at interns, for example, I think we have 200 applicants for summer internships for about 8 positions. So we do screen on GPAs, but I've always told people we hire, once you get hired, after you're hired, nobody ever asks what your GPA was after your first year.
Yeah.
It's how well do you perform. And so we find often some of the B students who work harder and have a passion may do equally well or better than an A+ student.
Yeah, yeah, it all comes down to passion, like you were saying,
Well, and hard work
and
and
hard work.
and teamwork. I mean, I personally, I like hiring people who played some team sport,
Yeah, I
because
can't even stress that enough. Yeah, go ahead.
like in volleyball, it's very hard to set yourself in a volleyball match. So, um, but the other thing is, get an internship. It's so valuable to see how a real company operates. And I mean, we have, I'm guessing half our employees came from internships over the last 17 years.
I definitely agree about the internships. I mean, knowing what you're about to get into and, figuring out if the work environment, what skills you need to learn beforehand is really helpful. And like understanding the work dynamic and environment is also really crucial. And, being able to have that experience before you're out of your college or university and before you actually get into your career, I think is a really important step, like you were saying.
And what I've heard over the last year is, I mean, there's internships. NASA, I know, did internships, but they were all virtual. A lot of smaller businesses like ours have done internships, but they were not virtual. They were on site. And what I've heard is you just get so much more value out of the internship when it's on site, because you interact better with people and you see how the company operates. So there's a program I think NASA does, is called Lucy, Lucy, and it's aimed at female engineering students. So anybody who's interested in that may want to look up, just Google NASA Lucy, Lucy.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great opportunity. And even I love how there's so many opportunities even for high school students. I feel like companies are starting to realize that there's no age boundary. You could be in college or high school and still have the same capabilities. I think you just need to put in the work ethic and, really have that drive to do it. But there really is no boundary for age. And through Ignited Thinkers, one of my biggest motives is showing students that don't be like scared to learn about space, thinking that you have to be like a genius in physics or have to take some physics class before getting into physics.
Well, there's a number of high schools, at least I know of high schools, maybe even down to junior high schools, who have designed and built very small satellites called CubeSats,
Yeah,
1U CubeSats or 3U CubeSats, and they're in orbit. And these were
yeah,
designed and built by high school students, teams of high school students.
yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely amazing. Different programs like CubeSat and everything are really allowing us, even for like with low cost materials, being able to do and create something using your creativity is awesome.
Yeah, like I said, when we go to the small sat conference in Utah, which unfortunately is going to be virtual again, but there are so many students there, and it's amazing what they've been able to accomplish. But they usually do it under the guidance of a professor who's been there, done that as well. For example, Cornell, Dr. Mason Peck is leading a really wonderful team there. And we work with Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh, the program called the Center for High Performance Computing in Space, Dr. Alan George. And those also become very good pipeline. We'll get interns from them and from there. And since we're in San Diego, pretty often the interns like the summer here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go surfing after work, and
Yeah.
then come at the end of their internship, they'll come in and go, Mr. Strobel, can I get a job? As soon as I graduate in May.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think it's awesome. It's the fact that, you can have that transition experience and get to know a job before you have to fully commit to it. I think internships are a great experience and opportunity. And as someone who's in high school, I think like I always seek after those opportunities and connections because it really helps, me understand what specific thing I like in space and what I have to do to, what skills I have to still acquire to do good in the job.
And teamwork's a key one. I mean, we have mechanical engineers, software engineers, firmware engineers, um, RF engineers, digital engineers, power engineers, system engineers, and they kind of have to work together.
Yeah, yeah, everyone has different strengths and different weaknesses and taking that into account. And sports, like you were saying before, it really helps with that. I mean, I've been playing basketball for a while now, and without basketball, I feel like I wouldn't be as able to, like communicate with others or like being able to figure out, okay, so this person's good at this, I'm good at this. So this is the time I have to pass the ball to them, and this is what I have to do. So it's like a thinking where you have to work together, identify another person's strengths and weaknesses, and being able to compensate for that.
That's an excellent very good analogy.
Yeah, thank you. And so now that we were able to understand your space journey, and how it went into, helping you in your life career with the help of your parents and how you were able to do so much with your space career, I'm sure you've been able to learn different life lessons and meet also a lot of other amazing space professionals, which has taught you so much. So what advice would you have for, young people in high school or college regarding their pursuit of a passion in the STEM field, the space industry, or really any field in general that they'd like to pursue? Something that you wish you knew when, you were younger.
Well, I think we touched on some of that already, but learn about it. And I mean, you can go online, and NASA has a lot of really good courses and classes you can take. Um, Even in high school, maybe you can even start some kind of space club. And like I said, there's some high schools. It doesn't cost that much to build one of these small satellites now. There's a company called Pumpkin, believe it or not, Pumpkin Space, and they sell little CubeSat kits. So you might even get involved in something like that at your high school. And then, hopefully go to college. Doesn't have to be an engineering degree, but that really, I think, helps. And if I was advising somebody who wanted to go into the space community, I would look at a university or college that had a CubeSat program. And there's probably 60 of them in the US and more all the time. And then when you're in college, have a good balanced life, but also try to get an internship. Maybe one at a big company one summer, one at NASA maybe another summer, and a smaller company like Space Micro another summer. Then you can see what you like best.
Yeah, I think that's some amazing advice. I mean, first is to continuously keep learning, looking out, seeking internships, finding universities that you'd like to go through, or like even programs, like even, in high school or college, you can join different forums or organizations with memberships. Like I know AIAA is a big one, or like the National Association of Rocketry. There's so many programs for even high school students to get involved and, connect with mentors to help you, as well as like learn about different opportunities. So yeah.
No, that's a good point. AIAA and IEEE. I mean, I've given a few presentations to the local IEEE, and one of them's like my favorite one is like why your cell phone won't work very well in space or for very long.
Yeah. 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 I think, being able to hear from professionals like yourself in those like webinars and different discussions allows like a lot of students to get involved and learn ahead, like understand that these people are your role model and figure out what they went through and how they got there and how you can also, achieve similar goals.
A lot of high schools will have robotics clubs, which
Yeah.
maybe it's not a total space club, but robotics is increasingly important in space.
Yeah, in computer science and programming and artificial intelligence as well. Like, apart from the mechanical side of building robots, like through the first robotics program, for example, I think also learning programming, a language or two, could really help in the space industry.
Absolutely. I mean, most of the systems going into space now are reprogrammable. So we'll put one of our space computers up there, and then 2 years later, there's better algorithms that software people write. And through the space radios, we upload
Oh, wow, that's
the
awesome.
new code, and now you have a better satellite.
Yeah.
And that's how you learn it in software classes.
Yeah, being able to, actually write the program, but also use artificial intelligence to help humans in space and, have that technology there for increased space tourism in the future. And maybe, there's just so many possibilities, and always keeping an open and broad mind while getting into the space industry is really important. And combining multiple passions together is vital. So I want to thank you so much, Mrs. Strobel, for giving this amazing interview and talking about your journey and some advice and programs you would recommend students to get into. And thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Well, I enjoyed it. Hopefully you inspired a few more people to join our industry.
Yes, thank you so much.